Great. What would you like me to do? Any wishes for today? I think we have essentially one more lecture in which I can do a bit more HTML and CSS before next week I start JavaScript. So that's essentially the program. Once we start JavaScript, we will do a class on JavaScript, one on jQuery, maybe more, okay. But and after that we will move to Ajax. So essentially how to build applications that run in the web page rather than on the server mostly. So we talk to the web server as a way to store and retrieve information and do things like that. But most of the interesting stuff might happen actually in the web page rather than in the backend. Okay, so that's the rough idea. So any questions or any particular wishes or things you would like me to do at the beginning of this class, or should I just go ahead? Tell me. Yes?
Can you maybe show a little bit about how to change like the default CSS for Bookify?
Yeah, I don't actually do a lot of it. What I do is that I rip out a lot of the basic CSS. I mean, a lot of the content, but I'm not an. I mean, do you have a specific question? Because I don't know how to show. I mean, there's lots of stuff there. What do you would like me to do? I mean, if I just have to like change the color of the menu bar, I can do that. But
okay, yeah, I could make like a div just on like the display pages, and it's only, it seems like only some of the CSS tags work, like padding.
Yeah. So okay, let me tell you something quick about it. I would like to say that next Thursday, so 1 week from now, a person called Patrick will come here and give a lecture on CSS and styling and design. Okay, he's actually very good at it. I'm, you know, I hack things up, but I'm not a principal designer. So I essentially, you know, wing it and I look at it and sort of modify it a little bit. But also my graphical ability is limited in some ways. So I know what I like, but I just really don't know how to get to that, I guess. Whereas he's somebody who can both design the CSS and the divs and look and do all the graphic work. For example, you know, inventing icons, layouts, and various things like that, and talk about that. And so I think it will be an important lecture for the class because it will give you one of the components I'm not so great at actually. So, but let me actually try to answer some of these by giving you some. I'll do that. Let me start then with what I wanted to say about CSS and then get into that, okay? Okay. So let me share the screen. So here is, just because I'm lazy, my classical app, okay? And I just want to make a new controller so that we are, I don't know. Okay, maybe like visual.py. Okay, and here I simply do def index, and let me not do very much. Return an empty dictionary. Okay, so this will not do anything at all, I guess. Here in the views, I need to define a new folder. With the same name of the controller, you know this by now, and then here I can put a new file that index.html. Okay, so this gives us a place where to put stuff, and I just want to copy these couple of lines. Okay, so okay, fine. So this gives us a playground. One thing I want to do is talk about CSS and selection. Okay, so I've told you already that when you have a div element or a div or actually any tag in HTML, there are two things you can associate with it. One is the ID, which is meant to be unique, and if it's not unique, it's not really defined what various browsers do. I think you can look at the documentation, but you basically should try to avoid having IDs that are not unique. And the other is a class of which that instead is meant to be you can have more than one thing have the same class. In fact, that's what you typically do, right? All the paragraphs may share a class that says, I don't know, like a normal paragraph can be the class or whatever you want, okay? Classes can be shared among elements, as I said, and also a single element can have multiple classes. And you can imagine a class as a sort of like tag, as in, you know, if you use Flickr or other applications, you have these tags that you can add to images, right? So a class is similar in that. It tags things that should be rendered in some way. And you can also assign multiple classes to the same element. For example, you have seen in Web2Py that the class btn is used to render an anchor, a link, as if it was a button, okay? Now you can invent another class that says, I don't know, that says, for example, bigger, and when it's assigned to anchors, it makes the button bigger, and then you can very well assign to a single anchor both btn and bigger as classes, right? And when you see web pages that do animations, by the way, not animations in the sense that things that move in real time and behave, but for example, you know, when you hover, you see things that look different. You see these buttons that look a little bit nicer, etc., etc. So some of the can be done programmatically by dynamically adding and removing classes from tags. Okay, it will be one of the typical ways in which we will be able to animate stuff. Okay, a simple example would be actually to have a class that is called hidden, and to associate with it the display style none, so that things that are of that class are not displayed. And then we can, you know, very easily add or remove that class from elements in JavaScript. We will see later how to do that. And this will, you know, enable us to display or not certain portions of the page dynamically as we want. Okay, that's a typical example. So imagine that when the browser reads a web page, it reads it sequentially, right? So it passes it on the fly as it receives it. Typically, it doesn't wait for the whole page to be loaded before it starts parsing. It parses the web page and builds something that is called the DOM tree. DOM, DOM, stands for document object model. Okay, so essentially it's the parse tree of the page. Okay, and so you can look at that page. I'm sorry if I am here without a lot of fantasy, but you know, let me look at the CardGuide web page, for instance, just to name one. Okay, and you pick on an element, you say inspect element, and as I mentioned various times already, here, let me magnify this font a bit, but here you can see essentially this parse tree. Okay, and so you can see that this is btn login as class, etc., etc. Okay, and you can look at all the various ingredients. So imagine that you have this tree that is composed of tags. Every tag can have children. Okay, for example, you can see that this h2 tag has children. Children meaning descendants in the tree, right? And A is the descendant in the tree. A actually does not have any sub children. Okay. But this div, for example, as sub-children has both H2 and A, right? And then it closes. So you can have a list of children in general, and every child has or might have an ID and has or might have one or more classes. So that's the structure of the tree. And so that being the tree, you need to decide how to render it, how to make it look like. And so one of the things you need to do is to be able to pinpoint, and this is will be very important. You need to be able to pinpoint a certain element to change the way it looks. Okay, so we need that language to say, for example, hey, that paragraph over there, except we cannot point to it. So how do we select stuff on a web page? Okay, so this is a topic of selectors, and it, by the way, they will work in the same way for CSS and for JavaScript. So so also when we will be talking about sorry, okay, also when we will be talking about JavaScript, we will have the problem of we want to do this thing to this place in the web page. How do we denote a certain place in the web page? In the same way I'm telling you now. So there is only a very light syntax around. So or maybe I should say, so selectors. So if you have an element like a P or an H1, you simply write P and H1. If you simply write H1, you are selecting, so what we will be saying about style, about how rendering, or about selection from JavaScript will apply to all tags of that type. Okay, if I say H1, that will apply to all the H1 tags. If I say P, to all P tags. Okay, if I say div, to all div tags. Now, so these are essentially the tags. Okay, classes. The class selector begins with a dot. So, for example, this is everything that is a button of everything that is of class hidden, if we decide to define such a class. Okay, and IDs begin with a hashtag. So this can be, for example, like a student name label. Okay, I might have an ID. I might have something in the web page. Suppose the web page displays a form. Actually, if in Web2Py, if you look at it, every form has a unique ID. Every form line has a unique ID. Okay, the row has a unique ID, and also the label and also the content have unique IDs, so that you can very easily refer to a particular line in a particular form. Okay, that's easy to do. And so you can refer to it in this way. I think I will give you examples today of how to do that. Okay, so these are the three fundamental ones, and then there is. So there is more than I'm telling you, okay? I'm giving you the super short summary of what is more often used. But if you look at, if you search the documentation for CSS selectors or jQuery selectors, you will find a lot more than these. And I don't typically remember them all by memory. And when I need something complicated, I look up there. But the main relation is descendants. Any level. No, imagine child at any of any generation further. Okay, and so for example, suppose you want to say I want to select all the paragraphs that belong to a div that is called upper page portion. Okay, then I can say div dot upper page, and then I can say P. And this is this means all P that occur in a div of class upper P page. Okay, so a space means any descendant of any level. Okay, and then child first generation is instead div upper page. P, child first gen, otherwise as above. Okay, so this is a very basics. Now you can do other stuff as well in these selectors. For example, you can, if you have many children, you can select the even and the odd children in the order in which they are listed. This seems like a strange idea, why would you bother about even and odd children? The reason you want to do that is that, when you display a table, in fact, even I think Grader via the CSS does it, but when you display a table, it's often helpful to color lines of slightly different colors alternatively, right? And you don't want to like number every page. And I mean, one solution would be that you manually keep a page, a row counter, and then you manually give a class even or a class odd to every row. You can do it, okay, but it's a tiny little bit boring. And since it happens all the time that you may want to do something slightly different between adjacent lines, CSS has a way to select the even and odd children. I forgot exactly the syntax, but you can search and look it up if you want. There are other things you can do. For example, you can select, that input fields have a name. And this name is the name of the variable that will be used to submit the form, if you remember, okay? This is generated automatically by Web2Py. But so there is a way to select all the input fields, all the input tags that have a certain name value for the name attribute. So if you have values for attributes of tags, you can also select on that. And I forgot the precise syntax, but you can look it up. To give you an example of lookup, you can do this, no? You can say CSS selectors, okay. I mean, okay, everybody says that this is not the best reference, okay, but I don't care because the differences are too small for me to care. You see, you can check whether an input is checked or disabled. You can check whether what is the value of, and there is a lot of them. So where did I end up? Okay. Attribute is equal to value. Target is equal to blank. Okay. So for example, I can say here value of attribute. I can say input name is equal to I don't know. Name is equal to I don't know, grade, if we were in third grade. Okay, so that's where that would be the input line where the name of the variable is called grade. Okay, fine. You can do things like that. And so you can nest these things, and in the end, this gives you a language for picking out sets of tags, not sets of tags, but sets of nodes of the parse tree of the page to which rules might apply. Okay. So once you pick out these sets of tags, then you can specify how they should be rendered, okay? And so a typical CSS rule might look like this, okay? CSS rule. The general form is this. There is a selector, okay? Then there is an open square, and there is a sort of I don't know what are the official names things, but essentially name, comma, value, name, value, many of these, and then you close the parentheses, okay? So this is the format of a CSS rule, okay? And so, for instance, you can say hidden, okay? Display style, none. Okay, this would be a fine rule to say that everything that is of class hidden should actually not be displayed. Okay, and so I guess we can try it, and we can try to do similar things. Okay, so for example, let me play a little bit with it on the fly. Okay, so here, sorry, I have too many things that look the same open. What are we going to write? I'm not quite sure, okay? But for example, we can do an H2, or let's make it better. Yeah, make a div, and I say that this div is of class upper div, or upper, whatever, okay? And then I close it. And then I can say div class is equal to lower, okay, and then I can say, for example, that here there is a paragraph, sorry, a paragraph of class is equal to my paragraph, okay, and okay, and I can copy it here, so I have two of these paragraphs. Okay, fine. So if I do this, let me see if this works. I can. Sorry, I have too many windows always. So this is a welcome. I called it. How did I call it? Display, no? A visual. Thank you. Visual index. Why is it invalid? No, it's. Oh, it's in. I put it in bboard. Yeah, it probably was not a great idea. But whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, so fine, we see the two paragraphs. Okay, now if we want to have a style file, we can either include the styling directly in the page, or else we can make a style file that is loaded by the page. Okay, and just to make things slightly more useful, I might choose the other alternatives, because if you're going to do your own project, this might be what you end up doing. Okay, so if you want to do that, you go, you see, what we are defining here is the hole that is in layout.html. Layout.html contains the stuff that makes the top bar, etc., loads all the styling, and we are defining what goes inside there. So if we want to load a style, we have two choices. One choice would be to say here and say block head and then end. Okay, and we can put here what goes into a block called head, because layout has a block called head in which we can put stuff that will make it appear in the head. Okay, layout is this one, and you can see that at the bottom, towards the bottom, where is the block head? Oh boy, there normally is. Maybe it's above, because it's above the footer. Sorry, this is long, and so I get lost in it. Can anybody see the block head? Block center, block right sidebar. Oh boy. No, but before this there is a block head. Yes. I just feel lazy about it. Here. Okay. So this would be a way to make stuff appear in the head. And if you do that, you're modifying the head only of one particular page. Okay, so that's good enough in our case, and it enables us to keep the code always in the same place. But otherwise, to load the CSS, we would have to use a rule like this one. Okay, you see here they're including some CSS, and we could build our file and include it in the same way. Okay, I'm not gonna do this now, just for simplicity of editing in real time, but you should probably consider doing that in your in your project. Why is it better to define a separate file? For a few reasons. I think one is that you know, it keeps the CSS always in the same place, which makes it a little bit more organized. But the other main reason is that the longer your CSS becomes, if you put it into the head of your page, then it means that whenever you access a page, it's downloaded with the page. Because we remember the dynamic pages we're building as controllers are dynamic pages. So they're never cached, right? So if you have a lot of CSS, which, you know, tends to accumulate after a while, you would be downloading all that text with every single page, which is something you should try to avoid. You should try to minimize the amount of content you have to download with each dynamic page request. You know, think at people using you from mobile devices. You know, I mean, the fewer bytes, the faster the page loads. Instead, files that you put in the static directory, as I mentioned, there will be cached. So if you have a lot of CSS but you cache it, it will be loaded only once. And then, you know, up to, I don't know what your caching limit is. It can be 1 day, it can be 1 month. It's better not to give it too long, the caching limit, because otherwise, when you do an update, some users might see a broken site, because you updated the dynamic pages, but the browser will still have, you know, the outdated CSS, and incompatibilities might arise. So be on the watch out for that. Okay, actually. Now, you will never notice this under the development system, because the development system is smart enough to avoid this type of problems. But once you deploy your code on actual servers, this is something that will happen to you. So remember that people may not get the latest copy of your static cached content. Okay, so that's a problem actually sometimes. Okay. So these are the places where you can put the code. I don't know why this wasn't saved, but let me go to. So here I can say style, close style, okay, and here I can put my my rendering. For example, I can say, for example, div upper p, okay, and then I can say, and I always don't know what to say, okay, because I told you that I'm bad at CSS. So what do you do if you don't know what to say, or if you want to try out? You say that you want to inspect an element. When you inspect an element here in the style, you get to play with it, okay? It tells you both all the styles that apply to it and the ones that are overridden. You see this font size is erased because later there is something that says in body that font size is 14 pixel. And if you look here, that's where that rule is defined. So this will be very important to you. You know, when you define styles and you wonder why they're not used or why something funny happens, you can actually use the inspect element and you can say, oh, see all the rules that apply to that. Unfortunately, one of the common problems will not be easily solvable in this way. One of the common mistakes is this, that you write your style rule in such a way that for some reason it does not apply to the element you wish it to apply. And in that case, you will simply not see it there, but you will not see an explanation why it doesn't even apply, okay? That's a common error, and unfortunately, you know, there is no feedback on that. But so otherwise, you see, this element.style, this is like a placeholder to let you play with stuff. Sorry, I don't know why this is all... I just wanted this hi there. So let me refocus on that, okay? So hi there is this paragraph here, okay? And if I play with this element style, I can do whatever I want. For example, let's look how it would be if I do it bold and blue, okay? I can say font weight, and I can actually, how do I do strong bold-face things? Font, I think it's maybe font weight. And it auto-completes, and so you can say bold. Okay, how would this look? Ah, it would look this way, great. Now font color, no, I think it's simply called color. Okay, and I can say blue. Okay, that's how the way it would look. Okay, great, this looks good enough. So then, you know, I can essentially take these two lines as they are, go back here, okay, I can copy them, okay, because if I reload this page without adding those two lines, you know, these elements, any edits you do here are not done on the server, quite obviously, right? We're just playing with the web page. We're editing the web page as it's rendered in the browser, basically. So if I reload the page, this would go away, except that now I've written it in the server. So now when I reload the page, I get an error. Why? I mean, it must be this blockhead. Am I using the wrong syntax for blockhead? What is the error? Name current is not defined. Oh, that's quite annoying. It's telling me essentially that, yeah, there is an error, but the error is in an entirely different place. So it's completely unrelated to what I was doing. It's in db.py and it has absolutely zero to do. But unfortunately, I need to fix it because otherwise it will not render. So I think it's easier for me to fix it. Yeah, it was from last time. From glue on import current. I think this might work. Let me see quickly whether this works. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have checked, but name fitcd is not defined. You know, I'm getting too many errors and I don't really want to debug all the code I did the other time. Let me see if it's... Okay, so let's see, last attempt, if this works well, otherwise I'll just move that to a new application. Okay? Sorry. Let me build a new application. Go away. These, my sites. No. Sorry, I'm fumbling because this is too small. 1 second. Strange. I was able to create an application called CSS Examples that contains an underscore. I thought an underscore was a forbidden character. Okay, let me... okay, it won't take so long because all I need to do is this. I need to copy this index to CSS Examples views default index. So I can just overwrite the old index. Okay, and I think that actually that's all I need to do to be running in the sort of shortest amount of time. Okay, yes, we are there. Okay, so yes, okay, fine. Back to our regular programming. Let me close a few of these things. Now we are in CSS examples index.html. So fine, this is what we are doing. Okay, so you can see that I just selected one of these divs in order to give it a styling. And the best way to play with styling is this one, that you experiment with it here, and then once you're happy with the way it looks, you actually change it to your main main style file that is included in the web page. Okay, and now. There was this question from I think from you about how to lay out things in a page. Okay, so I think you noticed that when I change the width of this page, there are things in the top bar, for example, that get rearranged in semi-clever ways. Okay, so this semi-cleverness is due to some JavaScript together with CSS that this page loads. Okay, so this is using essentially a responsive design that tries to rearrange things on a web page according to how large the web page is. And this same style gives you some predefined classes that are quite helpful. For example, it's only that I tend to forget the names of these classes. So in order to juggle my memory, let's go back to not to these, sorry. Let me go back to here. You know, how comes that this thing here is here on the right sidebar? Okay, so let's inspect this element and see what's up with it. You see, there are these classes that say span 9, span 3, etc. So in this particular responsive design that is actually quite common, they decided that in order to help you lay out stuff, now look at the board a moment, okay? So they give you the blank web page, okay? And they divide it for you into 12 columns that are not drawn, but there are sort of, it's as if it comes with markers, and there are 12 of those, okay? And I told you that these are rectangular areas, right? And you can choose how many of those columns your div should be spanning, okay? And this is not and normally if you have a wide web page, as in a laptop in which you have a fairly wide window, all 12 of, you know, you have these 12 ticks, one on the side of the other. But this responsive design is good enough that when you squish it or when it's on mobile, these divs that normally can be on the side of each other can be put one below each other to fit better in the space, okay? So you essentially give an indication of how you wish things should appear if you have enough space. And then the rendering of the page via these a code that is loaded. The code is loaded here, by the way. In layout.html, there is this. Sorry, where is it? This Bootstrap. Bootstrap is the package that is used in order to do this rendering. Okay, and Bootstrap will try to make things fit in a better way. So you can lay out things in this way. You know, imagine we can say div class is equal to span 3, and this will try to span, or actually span 4, and this will try to span 4 of these elements. So, for example, if you want to lay out, you know, 3 of these blobs, you can put them span 4, span 4, span 4, and so you can make essentially a grid by saying span 4 by putting 3 divs of class span 4, and below them are 3 divs of class span 4, and this should form a grid. Let's try now to do this as an example. The beauty is that this is a grid that is more flexible than a table. Okay, a table is good, as I told you, if you really what you want to display is a table as in a picture of a paper, you know, one of these things that really needs to be a table. But these tables done with the divs with appropriate classes are more flexible in the sense that if you were to look at this page on a mobile phone, these divs would instead of forming a grid, would be put one below the other, so that the page is reflown in such a way that you might more easily read it. Essentially, using divs in this way is very nice because it allows the page to be rendered appropriately for the device size, while giving an indication of how things should be rendered in case you have enough space. Okay, so let's give it a try, I guess. Let me go into index.html, okay, and play with it. So, okay, I won't be using that styling. I can still put things inside my special div if I, well, yeah, why not? I mean, it doesn't really change things. But here I can say, for example, div class is equal to span 4, close div, and I can say, and I can add the 2 classes, okay, and I call it block. And if it's block, so a div of class block, I want to say something later, I guess. Okay, let me first do this. So I can say I don't know, block 1. Let me just do something super simple. And then, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. By the way, the fact that there are 12 of these columns is something that you can configure, okay? This Bootstrap comes with configuration files that you can dive into, and you can configure a lot of things. It's quite painful, at least for a person that is not a Bootstrap expert like me. I'll come to the question. It's quite painful, but you can do it. So, for example, you can say, no, you know, I don't want 12, I want 13. Bad idea, you know, you should try to find a number that is multiple of many things. But if you wanted to have 13, you could. Or else you say, look, no, I don't want it to change the rendering to the small mobile rendering when the page is smaller than 600 pixels. Wait until it's only 500 pixels before you do that. Now, the problem I found is that it's easy enough to change individual settings in Bootstrap, but it's very hard to change them in a consistent way. Bootstrap has a lot of dependency between these various settings, and if you just change one, you will typically get some place in which it won't render properly. So there are on the web some scripts and some sites that help you customize Bootstrap to your needs. Okay, and I should also say that there are two versions of Bootstrap. There is Bootstrap 2, which is what we are using now, and there is Bootstrap 3, which is supposed to be the newest and greatest, but it's actually more of a pain to use. Maybe I shouldn't say these things when I'm broadcasting. Okay, but you know, these things are always, you know, they accommodate some extra new needs and features, but they also complicate customizations and complicates many things. So you know, there is no great solution. Bootstrap, by the way, was written by Twitter, so in order to be able for them to create web pages that would very graciously accommodate to all screen sizes, and then they were kind enough to open source it and you know, give it away. So it's a great contribution. It's only that, you know, these CSS is not a particularly beautiful programming language, right? Because the problem of CSS, once you build a large site, is that you end up with a gazillion different rules, okay? Because you have evolved them, and those are the rules. And there is no very good way of changing a rule and having effects on other rules. So let me make a stupid example, okay? Just so that that the problem is this. Suppose I have here width 100 pixels, okay? Well, there is no way for me to put a variable here. It's not really a programming language. I cannot say, you know, width is equal to x pixels, and here I define a def function in which I define what x is in function of other parameters, okay? It's unfortunately not a programming language. So you end up with some set of CSS rules, and that set of CSS rules is fixed, and it does not contain a representation of the relation between values in the different rules. Okay, so to build complicated CSS, you are left with the two options: either you build a tool, or you go nuts, or you do both. And in the end, you typically do a bit of both. Okay, but there is no, you know, there is no. For example, you get the CSS for a large site. There is no way to know, okay, if I change this to 500 instead of 600 pixels, what else do I have to change? You know, it's not written. You have to figure it out. It's very painful. Okay, there was a question.
Can you put a border on these classes, on these divs?
Yes. I don't know how, but let's do it. I wanted to actually fill them with color, but that's exactly why I left it empty, because, yeah, you know, I have a pretty bad memory for things I'm not interested in. I also have some things I'm interested in, actually. So right. I don't want this right sidebar, by the way. Right sidebar false. Why is there a right sidebar? I say that I don't want it there. Let's see if I still get it. Yeah, but. So the problem is that I have this right sidebar block, okay, and I don't know why it's there, even though I say that the right sidebar enabled is equal to false. I mean, this shouldn't change anything. I just don't know why I'm getting that right sidebar there. Okay, so it appears that if I say that that something is equal to false, then it's actually does it. So I don't think I'm gonna debug these now. Sorry?
Instead of enabled and enabled, you can change it to disabled.
Okay. Okay, fine, better. So why do I see only those blocks instead of more of them? Okay. I don't know how many blocks they have defined the things to be wide. Do you know if it happens to be 12 or 10 or what? If I change this to 3, it will probably lay out in the other way. Okay. Okay, so I don't know exactly what they defined us with. I thought it was 12, but maybe I'm wrong. We can check it. Okay, so now there are these blocks, and if we want to style them, you know, now this is a responsive design. You see, until it believes that I have enough space, it will lay them out as you ask, and otherwise, you will put them one below the other. Now, this transition happens due to JavaScript that is embedded in Bootstrap at a certain pixel width, okay? And if you disagree with it, then you need to customize the way Bootstrap behaves, okay? And it's a little bit of a pain. Because again, if you look at it for this value 957, etc. in Bootstrap, you can find it. But if you change only that value, you will obtain that the main page behaves fine, but the menus on top, which rely on another constant, will start misbehaving. So you know, maybe this would be a good question for Patrick, how to you know, pleasantly customize Bootstrap. I don't know how to do it. Essentially, I use these helpers on the web, but then I compare files, but then you know, it's still a job of various hours for me to customize it. I don't know of a very good shortcut, and you know, I don't know if there is a magical shortcut. Essentially, they try to have these essentially CSS producers that customize it for you, but you know, everybody has their own particular taste. You may say, no, you know, the web page should behave this way when it's smaller, but the menus on top should behave this other way, and then you really have to dig into it. Unfortunately, there is some pain involved. You don't need to do it for the class project, okay? To this level of customizations if you don't want to, but I'm just telling you where they are, okay? So, but okay, so there was a question about making these blocks render a little bit better, okay? And so let's do it. So what I would like to do is this. I would like to define a background color that can be, for example, I don't know, light gray would work, sort of, okay? So but also I want to define, you see, when you have an element, there is, this is very helpful. You have the internal stuff that you put, then there is padding, and then there is border, and then there is margin. And so how do these work? Essentially, there is this is the border. So if we were to draw a pixel border, this is how this is you know, the meaning of the border. I think you imagine what the border is, okay? And so what's the difference between padding and margin? Padding is how far the internal content should be from the border. Margin is margin is if I have two of these objects and each one of them has a border drawn as a line, how much space should there be between these two elements? Okay, so if I draw it on the border bit, imagine that I want to do this for pictures. Okay, so here I have, you know, the picture number 1. So this is a picture with the sun and mountains. Okay, so this is really the picture, and this is a picture number 2 with I don't know, a person and whatever. Okay, so and these are the internal of the pictures. So I can draw a border, okay, and this space between the picture and the border would be the padding, okay? Instead, between one border and the other border, okay, this distance here, I'm sorry, it came out small, but this distance here would be twice the margin, because there would be between the border and this, and between the border and this, there would be the margin of one image and the margin of the other image. So essentially, well, okay, this is a little bit brutal and it's not entirely true, but if you don't have a border, the difference between padding and margin is sort of, you know, less important. But if you do have a border, it's important, okay? So now let's play with these things and define, for example, that the border is like 1 pixel. Okay? Sorry, the border is black 1 pixel. And why doesn't show it?
Might be border style.
Might be. Solid. No, this is no, not happy. Sorry?
Just border and then black on pixels.
Okay, fine, thanks. Yeah. Then there is margin. Okay, so we say padding. I don't know if we want to give any padding actually, but I don't know, why not? 3 pixels. So these, if I say padding 3 pixels, it would put a padding of 3 pixels all over the place. But otherwise, you can say you can specify left, up, down paddings. Okay, if you like. And then you can say, for example, margin, and we can say, I don't know, 10 pixels, okay? And this would sort of render, except that my 3 pixels here don't seem to show up very much. Oh no, they do show up, essentially, but the problem is that they have painted the same color of the internal, so it's actually not very useful to put these. Okay, so let me just remove it. Hey, how do I remove it? Sorry. Okay, it seems to have worked. Okay, so I can take these now and I can put it in my source code here. For any div of class block, okay. Sorry. And this will render it in this way, okay? And so, but this is very nice, because if you have enough space and you want to render things in a bit more interesting ways, for example, you can decide that some blocks are twice as wide as the others, right? And this would work. So this gives a very easy way to do this sort of flexible grids that, if you squish the web page, would sort of rearrange themselves in a way that might be more readable. Okay, so this is very widely used. Okay, great. Now I want to go back to forms a moment. So are there more questions on these? Sorry, it's a somewhat superficial covering of this, but at least this will enable you to organize these things visually around. Yes?
So if you only want block words to show on that side, would you just make the other two hidden?
Say it again?
If you only want block 4 to show on that side, would you make block 2 and block 6 hidden, or would you just use CSS?
If you only want to have block 2 on the side.
Block 4 on the side.
So if you want 3 blocks on one side, but on the other side a bigger block.
No, you just want block 4 to be that small section.
To be a?
That small section for block 4.
But what about block 2? What you want it to be? Sorry.
Gone.
Gone.
Yes.
But so okay, you want block 2 gone, but you want something there.
Like you want block 4 to stay where it is, and the other 2 is.
Okay. I mean, you would simply do a div that you just style it as to be transparent, right? I mean, because you still want something there to keep the page organized and the grid organized in the way it is. It's just that you don't want it to have any content. And so, you know, the way I would do it is this. In fact, it's super quick, because you can take these. It's block 2, right? That you don't want. Let me remove the block style, and then, you know, the okay, yeah, of course, but I mean, I have to also remove these, I guess. Okay, but if I do these, you know, the place is there because it's still a class span 3, but it's a div if it's of that class, but the default display style for a div is to be transparent, and so it's transparent and it does exactly nothing. Okay, so that's how you can lay out things in grids. So this is pretty flexible. Also remember that the divs can be nested one inside the other, right? And so this works also for nesting. So Suppose you wanted to have 3 blocks on the left but only a big one on the right. How would you do that? Well, it's easy. You would do a page that contains a block of span 6 and a block of span 3. Okay, full stop. Then inside of the block of span 6, you would put all the various things you want to put on the left, and inside of the block of span 3, you would put all the things you want to put on the right. Okay, so that's why one of the reasons divs are so incredibly universally useful. There's a sort of, it's like the Lego block of a web page, in some sense. No, there are these rectangular regions that you can arrange and put to lay out the page in the way you want. Okay, so and they're useful in 2 ways. They're useful for layout, and they're useful for finding stuff. Finding stuff meaning in the parse tree. So, for example, suppose I have many blog posts displayed on a page, and maybe every blog post is displayed, and it will have its text filled in from something that comes from the controller, right? But I need to be able to refer to each blog post individually. I want to say, for example, if you click on that blog post, I want to do something. So how do I know where to click? There will be a way to attach listeners to elements of the web page. And so I will say, let's make every blog post display in a div, and let's give an ID to the div that will be able to tell me where the blog post came from. The ID of the blog post. So when you click on it, I can say, what did you click on? Well, let's look at the div and let's fish out the ID of that div, and that will tell me what you clicked on, what blog post you clicked on, so that I can, I don't know, share it on Facebook or whatever you may want to do with it. Okay? Great. So very good. So what I wanted to do this, and I wanted to also show you 2 other things. One is how to customize times in local time and time zones, which is difficult to do and distractive. But the other thing is how to customize forms. And now that we are doing this CSS, I want to do this first because it's very easy. And it's very related to CSS. I mean, it's based on CSS, basically. So let me go in this. I need the controller for default. Fine. Too much text. I just want to build a form. And I want to say form is equal to SQL form.factory of, it doesn't really matter a lot, okay? But let's put a couple of fields like field name, and then there is another field that is let me do it a bit better, okay? First name, just for the fun of it, and last name. I think this is enough for the example I want to do, okay? So now we go to the view, and here in the view, I can just put it above the rest, okay? Just for the fun. And I can say, put my form here, okay? So if I do this, I notice that I don't even bother to process the form. It's not really about that, okay? So fine, I get the form. Now, if you look at the form in more detail, inspect element, you will see that every label, every piece of the form, it has, look at it. This is a table in which there is a row that has an ID. No table, first name, row. No table is because I have defined this SQL form factory. If this was defined as an SQL form for a table of people, it would be called people first name. Okay, but I haven't used any table, and so WebPy uses no table as a prefix there. But so the label has an ID, the row has an ID, the label has an ID, and inside here there will be the input field, which also has an ID. Okay, so Web2Py is gracious enough to attach these classes and IDs all over the place. So if you want to actually style the way your forms appear, you can do it quite easily, okay? So for example, I don't know, imagine that last name, we believe that it's more important, okay? And we wanted to make compulsory fields so that you cannot leave empty. We want to make them boldface. Let's make these as a small example, okay? So how would you do that? Well, there are two ways. The easy way is if we want to manually do it, then we can see, okay, last name is here. So, you know, the element here is called, it has an ID, not table, last name, label. So if here I put a rule that says ID, no table, last name, label. And I say something like font weight bold. Modulo my possible errors, you know, now I don't trust myself, but this should do it. Yeah, it did it. Okay, fine. So this is okay. And you can do things like that all the time. And you can also say, for example, display style none, and then you can make some labels disappear if you think that they are boring, etc., etc. Okay. Now, imagine that you decide the following. You think, you know, this is silly. You know, I don't want. I'm using forms in all my application. Okay, and I have this table that I'm gonna create, where in the database, in which once and for all I specify which fields are required and which fields are not, okay? I would like all the required fields to always display bold. I don't want to mess up, you know, with my CSS on every page by having to figure out, you know, how the ID is called in that particular page. I don't want to mess up with these. I want to be able to define something that will make it happen automatically. And that something is this. You want to define, you want to say, you know, think at it a moment. You have a field in the database, and this automatically creates an HTML element. This Web2Py does it for you. But how does it decide to do that? And above all, can we hijack the phenomenon so that, for example, when it generates that element, we can add some classes if we wish, right? So can we decide which fields are generated how? Okay. And the answer is yes, you can. Okay, so there are in Web2Py things called widgets. So if you have ever wondered why, you know, dates, when you have a date time field, Web2Py brings up this calendar, etc. It's because Web2Py has some correspondence between the content of a field and the way it's rendered, okay? And you can change it. Oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong URL. I mean, that's also a good URL, but it's not the one I wanted to. Validators, widgets. So you can, these are the widgets available in Web2Py, and you can assign them manually, okay? Or also, you can define your own widgets, okay? And a widget is nothing else but a function, okay? That tells you how to represent a field of a particular type. So let's copy this a moment and try to use this code. Sorry, default. Okay, fine. So normally I wouldn't put this into here, okay? So but let me put a comment like this ought to go in a model, okay? And I just put it here. Well, actually, yeah, it's kind of horrible to put it here, but I'll do it nevertheless. Just to edit in one place. So this is a my string widget, and you see it tells you how to build the input field. And so class, we can say that the class is required. Okay, so we want to label things as required, and my string widget, we call it I rename it to required widget, okay? And so you see, this given a field of the table and the value for that field, this builds the input element for you. Okay, so this is how the HTML is produced. Not for the label, unfortunately, okay, but for the field itself. So let me do this. The last name is required, assume, okay? So I can say, so widget is equal to required widget. A moment, okay? I just want to test this code by stages. So if I reload this, I see absolutely no change. But if I inspect this element, I see that now this input is of class required. Okay, so this has done no change. In particular, this boldface still comes from my static CSS rule. Okay, but at least I've been able to do that. So I'm a small step forward. Now let me try to do something better. Let me get rid of this ad hoc CSS rule. Okay, and so if I do this, okay. Now what do I really want to do? I mean, a typical thing that you may notice in websites is that when a field is required, the background may be yellow, okay, or something like that. So let me try to do this. So I inspect this element, and I start to play, and I say background color, and I may say that this is yellow. Yeah, like, isn't it not like yellow? No, yeah, light yellow. Yeah, this seems a little bit more, you know, softer to the eye. Okay, so the background color light yellow. Now I write here a CSS rule that says input required background color light yellow. Okay. Now, if I do this, when I reload this page, this will still be light yellow. And now, if I want to make the other field be light yellow as well, all I need to do is in the code, or better, you know, in the definition of the table, I would do it. I would write, sorry, I have too many things open here and I get confused all the time. Let me just close a few of these things now, if there are not too many to close. Otherwise, I never know what I'm editing, and after a while, it's sort of, you know, difficult. I think I meant so. Okay, so if I want to make them both required look that way, I simply need to say my code widget is equal to required widget. Now, the advantage of doing this is that I can define it once and for all in the database tables, okay? And then whenever the thing is drawn, it will always have that style. So now I don't have to worry anymore. I can use forms to input people first and last names in many places in my site. And whenever I ask for fields that I defined as, you know, using that widget, they will be colored appropriately for required information. So this is you know, this is very useful and very simple, and this also helps you. This is just one example in customization, but you can do many similar ones. Okay. Another thing that I should point out is that Web2Py by default outputs a form as a table. Sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want to just output a series of divs. And there is a way to do that. When you build the form, you can give it an option to say, don't output a table, output divs. What is the advantage of outputting divs? That if you resize the page, they will be better arranged. Okay. So, okay, this is one thing that I wanted to do. The other thing, and it's really a bit boring to explain in detail, so I will go to the site where I do it. So time zone okay, so I wrote some code in some place, okay? So about detecting the user time zone. I think you can go to it and I will include a pointer. Actually, I will ask you to do something like that in one of the homeworks, okay? So the story is this: you should always only store UTC time in databases, okay? Because local time seems simple, but it's actually complicated, okay? The problem is that if I tell you that it is 9 a.m. Pacific time now, it's difficult to know what the UTC time is, because the meaning of that time in that time zone depends on whether there is daylight savings or not. And daylight savings does not always begin in the same month of the year at every moment. And so it's a recipe for complication, essentially. You should store in the database the unique clear information and then worry on the way in or out of the database. By the way, one of you, unfortunately, I don't remember who he was. He might be here. It was you. Was it really Google Calendar that had the wrong time zone set? Yeah. So I just wanted to tell you, because it's a bug in Google Calendar, it sometimes gets set on the wrong time zone, and then you believe that the appointments are in the slots are in the wrong times. It's a bug that is known, but they just haven't fixed it. This is just one more example of why it's difficult to handle times. So you would think that the browser tells you the time zone of the user, but it doesn't. Okay, and so here there are instructions on how to do that, and essentially this works in this way. We have to encode a little bit of JavaScript that is detailed here in the user browser. Okay, and this JavaScript will do some crazy trick in JavaScript. It's actually very complicated code that fortunately somebody wrote. And this does some great hack to try to determine in which time zone you actually are. And it works for most of the time, okay, for like 99% of the users in the world, okay? So once this detects, it needs to tell you. And this is, the first example of Ajax we will be seeing. So there is a way for the web page to call back home and tell the server information. So not only when the next page load happens, but even before, okay? So this JavaScript that you inject in the browser via these lines will call home by calling essentially a method of our web page. And the method will do something like this. We write a method that says def set time zone. I say tz name is equal request.vars.name. So you see I'm fishing some elements out of the reply. And then I'm importing the file zone, the time zone setup, and I'm saying session.user time zone is equal to tz name. So essentially, in the session, this storage unit that is associated with the cookie, I'm storing the name of the time zone of the user. Okay. Why am I doing it? Because once I have that information, I can pass it to the isDateTime validator that will do a fairly reasonable job of translating to and out of a specific time zone into UTC. So this is the way, it's unfortunately important for many of your projects, but this is a way to detect the time zone of a user. It happens in this way, essentially. The flow happens in this way. The user goes to your website and gets a page called, I don't know, gets your home page, okay? This is your server. Now, in the home page, we have injected this piece of JavaScript, okay, which I don't explain you what it does, but I explain in detail, that this is what you need to put in your layout.html, okay? You put this code that injects some JavaScript there, okay? And this JavaScript that is there will call home to your website, okay? And it will make a call to this method, to this URL that is called the default set time zone. So this will call set time zone. Okay? in set time zone, what you do is that you say session dot whatever, session dot user time zone, okay, is equal to vars request dot vars dot tz name or something like that. Okay, I mean the precise code is there, but essentially you store in a session variable associated with the user cookie. You store the name of the time zone. After you store this information, what you can do is that you can use the name of the time zone inside inside this validator. And validators are essentially objects. I don't want to go into the details. I will be happy to if there is any request. But there are two pieces of the translation from database to visual forms. Okay, one is how to generate the HTML elements, and that is a widget. And I gave it to you before as an example. It's a simpler one of the two translations. Okay. The other thing is what to do with the value in the database. You know, the database might contain a value, but you might want to display a different value. And so these things are, these translations are done by validators. Validators essentially validate data and transform it appropriately. So the isDateTime validator is able to get a time zone, and then it will convert from local time to UTC time. UTC time stored in the database, local time used for input and output. Okay, so this is nice and important, but it's unfortunately a complicated detail. Okay? Okay, great. We have a bit of free time, meaning that we can do whatever we want before we start JavaScript next time. What would you like me to do? I can take questions.
Can you go for like customizing the navigation bar?
Oh yes, that's very easy actually, super easy. So if you want to customize the navigation bar, in the modules, in the models, there is this file that is called menu.py. This menu.py contains some stuff that goes into the header of your site, you know, for search optimization purposes. You know, you can put a tagline, you can put this kind of stuff. But here, you can say what the menu should contain. Okay, so you see this, that there is this menu. Sorry. Home. Okay, this menu home, actually, what does it do? It doesn't do anything. It goes to the home of your site. So here you can add other things. Okay, so like home, and this is like vacation, the opposite of home. Okay, false, and then you can say you are I don't remember how to say this, but I'm inventing, okay? I want to see whether this works. Actually, I did it for CloudGrader, so I could simply probably copy from there. I had to do a bit of trial and error, but let me say like how, why, how to say that? Actually, let me do something faster, okay? Because I also couldn't figure it out. Sorry, a moment. Okay, so this is the format I'm using essentially. So So let me just put this in and then we can edit it, okay? Because otherwise I cannot really remember necessarily how to do these things. It's not well documented, you know. What I had to do was reverse engineer what is there. So, and let me comment on it. This will probably not work, okay? So, so I should probably comment it out. This. But this will give you a starting point. You see that I can say home might have its own URL. So when you click to home, you go home. Okay, very surprising but true. When you click manage, there is a list of stuff. So this is this last element, which is the list. You know, you have a title and then you have an optional drop down. The content of the drop down is given in this list. In CodeGuide, if you click on manage, you get on a single choice that says create assignment. If you click on help, you get 3 choices. You get documentation, contact us, and what's new. Okay, and they are written in this way. Okay, so yeah, I don't know why they need to be written in this way, but that's the yeah, I don't know. I mean, so essentially, the format is you put the link that should be in the as header, and then you put an optional list of stuff that is in the drop-down list. Okay, and otherwise, you know, many of these things are fully documented in all the possible frameworks. I mean, there may be something on menu.py, on menus in the book. But the other thing you can do is always look at the code. So somewhere this menu is rendered, right? So there is some code that renders that menu that is probably not so large. And it's going to be written in Python. And so now that you know Python, you can go and actually read that code. I know it sounds horrible, but you know, sometimes you have to do it. So I can leave that there as an example of a view, okay, of what I do. But it works that way. I don't know if there is documentation in the book. Let me look at like web2py book menu. Yeah, no, I cannot immediately find it. Maybe here. Maybe here. Okay. So here there is more documentation. So menu is a helper, and I think that menu is the same helper that is used to actually build the menu that you have on the top bar. So you know, you can probably read that documentation and sort of figure out what you have to do. Other questions? Yeah.
Is there a way to modify the functionality of the pickup in the form?
Yes, we will see it with the JavaScript. So what you do essentially is this. In JavaScript, you can detect any event. I'm sorry, by the way, I'm feeling that this lecture is necessary, but it's not very conceptual, right, what I'm giving you now. So I cannot wait to move to sort of JavaScript and programming to do more fun stuff. This will come next week, essentially. But in order to do what he says, so how do you add the behavior to a submit button? For example, maybe you don't really want to submit the form, and maybe you just want to, you know, that once you fill in the information, then you click submit, you make something else on the same page. Okay, for example. So how do you do those things in general? You, I told you that the browser parses the content of the web page, and it lays out in a parse tree, and every element corresponds to a region on the screen. For example, you have these, and maybe you have 2 elements inside. So every element, as you can see also from the debug mode, corresponds to a region on the screen. Okay, every element has a certain number of events that it detects. Okay, and you can associate, you can detect those events via code and decide what you want to do when these events happen. Okay, typical events are you click on it. That's probably the most typical event. Okay, so if you click on an element, if you click on a piece here of the page, that element will receive the click handler. It's called the click handler because it's the code that is supposed to do something when you click. Okay. Now this element may not have any click handler defined, because maybe you just want to say when I click on the upper portion of the page. So maybe this outer element has a handler defined. Okay. But maybe the inner one does not. So when you click here, it says, do you have a handler? Yes. Then run it. No, then don't run it. But in any case, look at the next enclosed element handler. Does this element have a handler? Yes, then run it. When you run a handler, there is also a way to say, and stop any other handlers that are bigger than me. For example, if you want to have, if you want to that this button has a very specific click handler, you can handle the click via handler associated with this element and say, and now stop processing. Okay, so that this handler will not run because you already finished everything you needed to do when you were running the inner handler. Okay, so there is this hierarchy of layout on the web, and you can associate event handlers to each element. Okay, and we will be doing this quite commonly with JavaScript. It's one of the easiest or main things you actually do. Okay, so events are click, focus, defocus. You can also detect when the mouse goes out. Now, of course, the problem of focus and defocus, I think it's called blur actually, the event of losing focus. But the problem of focus and blur is that on mobile they don't work, because in mobile, either you put the finger or but you don't have this finger that goes around before it actually clicks. Okay, so you have to be careful with not using focus and blur to match when you're on a mobile device. But so click, focus, defocus. Then what are the other events? So they never come to my mind except when I need them. I mean, I don't remember if submit is an action. You typically get the click on the submit button actually to act. Okay. You know there is a cursor when you start writing in a field, right? So there is an action for when the cursor appears in an editable field, and there is an action for when the cursor disappears in an editable field. And there is also an action for every individual key of the keyboard when you press it and when you release it. Okay. So, for example, have you noticed that if you define a field integer, even if you try to type a word in a field integer, the characters that are not digits do not appear? There is some JavaScript in Web5 that monitors the event of key down and key up. And there is a rule in that JavaScript that says when you do key up or key down in a field that is of type input from integers, input that is a field that is of class, in an input element that is of class integer or something like that, it says, on the key up, look at the key that was typed, and if it's not a digit, remove it. No, something like that. So and so for the form, you can do this to complete the answer. You monitor the submit button, okay? And when somebody presses the submit button, you say, well, on click on the submit button, do, I don't know, display this other information somewhere else on the page, okay? And then there is a way to say, and prevent default, and this will prevent the default action associated with the button, because, some buttons have default actions associated. In the case of submit is, the default browser behavior is to submit the form, actually. And you can say, prevent the default behavior, and in that way the form is not submitted. And this is something that I plan to do, but I need one or two classes. I want to tell you about JavaScript and jQuery. JavaScript is a general programming language for the web, and jQuery is the way to tie the programming language to the structure of the document you're operating on, essentially. So yeah, two classes on that, I guess. Yeah, okay. So that you can do all these type of things. So from now on, I think I want to move the class to really more dynamic behavior in web pages. Another thing that I would like to ask you is this. I don't know whether to do a poll, but at some point I want to talk to you about hosting. And this is not only a lecture about hosting and like where to put it, but in my opinion, hosting is a much bigger topic. In some ways, it's more important than to choose the hosting than to choose the details of a programming language in which we develop. Because hosting is developing in an entire set of web services that you can actually your application can actually use while it's being hosted. You know, it's not only, okay, I need to serve pages to the user. Fine, yeah, that's one of the things you need to do. But it's also, I need to, like, what types of storage do I have available to me? What type of caching do I have available to me? What type of cloud data structures? For example, one thing I often use is process queues, right? So that you can queue things to do that will be done by some number of servers, but you want some queuing mechanism so that you can you can organize your computation in the cloud. Okay, let me give you an example. In CodeGrader, when you want to compute grades for a class, which I need to do, by the way, it may take a few minutes because it does all this various statistical mess, and so I don't want to do it while I reply to your request. What I want to do is I reply to your request and I want to queue a job in the background that will compute all these grades and do all the proper things. So does my hosting mechanism give me background queues of that kind? Okay. Another startup for which I consulted some time ago is does essentially a transcription of meetings from voice to text. So you know, using some text product, some speech recognition tool, but essentially, you know, speech recognition takes some time. So how do we do it? Well, you know, we take what you say. I mean, when you upload the file, you know, we have to somehow split it into some units of processing that are queued for processing, because that will take time, and then we have to assemble the results. So it's all done by these various queues that do various stuff. Right? So this is very common. It is not only, so hosting does not only mean, you know, do I use my desktop in my room or not, but it's more, you know, how do you choose what are the sort of complete set of services and what are really the primitives, the sort of basic operations that you want to do a lot that are available on these various possibilities. And so I want to give you a lecture on these. And I think, in fact, you would be better off, you know, you would learn more from this class if instead of saying, you know, I have this server sitting in the basement, let me just run on that, you would hold off until you listen to that in order to decide where to host, frankly. So how early would you like me to give this class on hosting? Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking when to speak on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when would you? You would, but sooner or later is the question. I will do it without doubts, but it's how soon. Who would like it like in the next, I think that is the next 2 weeks or towards the end of the class? Who would prefer it towards in the next couple of weeks? Who would prefer it at the end of the class? More people. So let's say that the people who want advice earlier come to see me during the project reviews, and I'll give them personalized advice, I guess. Okay. Any other question? Any other thing?
What server does CrowdGrader use?
I actually I've become a fanatic of Google App Engine and the Google Cloud in general. And there are several reasons. What are the reasons? So I want to tell you more in the lecture about hosting, but essentially I like very much what I get for free. Not meaning that that it costs little money. It's actually more expensive per CPU cycle. I mean, you get some more free, but the rest is more expensive than if you host it in other ways. But why do I like Google App Engine a lot? I think the main reasons why I like it are it's scalable. So once I define a maximum dollars per day, if people like have a homework deadline and they submit all at the same time, it will just spin up more servers, and they don't need to delete anything. Okay, there are a rule that I give it a rule like if a user waits for more than 2 seconds to find a free server, spin up another instance, and it will do it, and I don't need to worry about it. I can go to sleep, and if there is a peak because somebody you know, and Hawaii has a deadline in the night for me, I don't need to care, and it just spin up. And it does. I mean, sometimes it's running on 5, 6 servers at the same time when there is a, you know, a deadline or something like that. So, scalability. I like that it comes with a lot of the services I use. I have a SQL database, I have a NoSQL database for the Google Data Store, I have processing queues for things that take longer time. It has an mail API to send you emails. It has all that. And another thing that I like a lot is that it has searchable logs. So I gave you, by the way, and I really encourage you to use the logging way to log, right? But I have these logs that are invaluable in debugging, and I can search them. For example, I can put in my name and I can see all my last accesses. Or when a user, for example, tells me, this went wrong. Okay, with what username did you log in? They give me the username. I can search for the username in my logs in the past month if I want, and I can find all the accesses of this person. And you know, I do log information, so if there is an error, obviously it will be logged. But also, if you know, not only that, but I can see, okay, first he submitted, then he looked at it again, then he did this, then it broke. You know, and this is the invaluable information for debugging. If you do it in your basement server, the log is there as a big ASCII file, and then how precisely are you going to search for it? Yeah, you know, it's great. You can load it up and you do less or you do whatever, but it's much less handy. Okay? I'll give you. Let me give you an example. Just of, you know. These are my various hosted projects. You go there. I click on logs. These are the logs. I would just wanted to see the informational ones. And you know, for every one of these, it's folded, but there is more information about what a person is doing. I don't want to reveal information of another user, but for example, I can search for myself when I log in my administrator mode. Okay, these will be my own accesses. And I don't do very many, so this might take a moment because it's searching through multiple days and weeks. Okay, I am storing 6 months of logs or more. Okay, so this is me. Fine, I can go, you know, look at one of these things and I can expand it, and it tells me precisely everything that is happening. It's incredibly easy to do this. And so this is another thing of the things I like very much. And you can see it has a lot, you know, it gives me a dashboard. I can see how many people are using it, how. It gives me, another thing that is invaluable is this. You don't see it, but it's in the background. But suppose you're running 5 servers. How do you push new code on the 5 servers at the same time? The normal way is the painful way. So what do you do precisely? You log in into each one of them and change the code and do a git fetch. I mean, you know, really, you have 5 machines on Amazon Cloud and you need to change their code. How do you do that? Well, tough. I mean, so you need to build a new instance and wind up the old instances and bring up the new instances. It's not that hard, and people write scripts, but it might take you 5 minutes. In Calculator, I update my code giving a 1-line command. And this updates the code on all the running instances. And it's even better than that. You see I have various versions. So there's 1, 2, 3, 5, Luca, and I can define more. So I can decide that this new code goes on version, you see, now the 3 is the active one. Next time I will do a change, I will push it to version 1. And then I will do the following. Fine. 10% of the traffic goes to version 1. 90% still to version 3. I watch it for 1 hour. If I don't see anybody screaming at me and I see no errors, then I switch over the traffic to version 1. If I made a serious mistake, before anybody realizes, and I put version 3 back as the default, and then back as I was before I pushed the default. This is fantastic. I mean, I can push it 10 seconds. It's incredible, right? Compared to the alternatives. So if you have a small team, something like this enables you to develop way, way faster than if you have your server in the basement. I'm biased, okay, because I know this better than other alternatives. But on the other hand, I'm using it for CodeGrader. The other startup where I consult, Cameo, is using it and does everything on that. And CamioCam has serious volumes of stuff to process. You know, it's like millions and millions of images a day, and it all scales up and down, and it all just works. Snapchat, no, not Snapchat. Yes, Snapchat is built on App Engine as well. Okay. So I mean, there are many. There are others. I don't remember the whole list of startups built on App Engine. But you know, Snapchat started with how many people? 4, 5, 3? I don't know. You know, they always stayed small actually, and they were extremely successful. Why? Because pushing the code was so easy for them as well. So I don't know. I mean, there are drawbacks, and when I do the lecture on hosting, I want to tell you more about the advantages and drawbacks. Okay, but that's what I like actually, just because. I think that speed of development is more critical than other things at the beginning. And if you can do it with a tool that enables you to be so fast without having to, you know, carry a pager or, you know, be alerted via SMSs when things go down at night because you need to have one more machine, I think it's a lot better. Okay, you really gain, because it's hard to find. It's not only, you know, let's do this so I don't need to add another team member that will look at the servers. It's only that, you know, once you have one more team member, that's complication and interaction. And, you know, if you can do it faster, you go faster. And then if you have the money for one more team members, then you use that person for more interesting stuff, essentially. Okay. By the way, I will be assigning homework 4, which will be not a very big variation on homework 3. It will be basically adding to these revisions to the wiki, so that you can visualize a series of revisions and revert to a previous one. That's all there will be in it. I still have to finish typing it, but I will put it live today at some point.
When do you think it'll be due?
In 1 week. No, in 6 days. I'm sorry, I should have done on Wednesday. Yeah. Yes.
Are there going to be?
Let me just stop this.